Gracefully joined by Mr. Ernie Gallo. Again, I met Ernie Gallo at the first national summit to assess the U.S.-Israel special relationship in March 7, in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. Mr. Ernie Gallo is a Navy veteran. He's a former intelligence officer with the Central Intelligence Agency, a highly decorated military professional and U.S. veteran who is also a survivor of terrorism. Our American veteran, patriotic hero, Mr. Ernie Gallo, has survived an assassination attempt on his life 47 years ago, and I asked Mr. Gallo to join us at the 7 o'clock update so that you will hear his firsthand account in his own words for yourself, to hear his shocking story of how this patriotic American was attacked during and survived an attack for almost 2 hours, an unprovoked attack by what was and has continuously been billed as America's #1 ally. And Mr. Gallo is going to discuss the attack, his surviving that attack, that harrowing day, and the subsequent 47-year-long cover-up. So without further ado, I introduce you to Mr. Ernie Gallo.
How you doing, Vance?
Hi, Ernie. Thank you again for joining me. So just, quickly, briefly, if you can talk to me about your joining the United States military, pre USS Liberty attack. What prompted you to join the American military, the U.S. military, and your time as a serviceman, and up until your assignment to being assigned to the USS Liberty?
Well, and if you remember back in those days, the Vietnam War was going on. I was going to electronics school, and I realized that someday my 2S deferment would be up, and I felt like I wanted to get a handle on my future. So I joined the Navy Reserves, and consequently I got interested in Navy the Navy intelligence, and I became a communications technician. And the Navy was very, very kind to me as far as future additional schooling was concerned. And after making me a cryptologist, they assigned me to the USS Liberty. So the USS Liberty was an intelligence ship, and we were home ported out of Norfolk. And our normal routine was to go out for 4 months and sail up and down the west coast of Africa, vacuuming the Ethernet, and then return to Norfolk for 2 months. So it was 4 months and 2 months. I reported to the ship the end of September of 1966, and I made one full cruise. We returned in February of '67. They sent me back to school again for another crypto device, and subsequently we left Norfolk May 2nd for our normal cruise up and down the west coast of Africa. Our first port of call was Abidjan, Ivory Coast, and it was then that we got orders. This was about the 20th, or about that point, to weigh anchor and go to Rota, Spain, to pick up additional linguists and supplies, and then go into the Mediterranean as they expected hostilities to break out between the Arabs and the Israelis. So we arrived June 8th, the morning of June 8th, 1967, off the coast of the Sinai. And by that time, if I can back up for a moment, Israel started the war on June 5th, and they immediately took out the air forces of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. So they had complete air superiority. And then they also acquired Gaza, the West Bank, and the Sinai.
So just to clarify, so where was the USS Liberty on
We
June
were
5th when the war started?
we were on our way in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
We were thousands of miles away, and we traveled at our top speed, which was like 18 knots. The USS Liberty was a World War II cargo ship converted to make it an intelligence ship, and we were a very, very odd-looking ship in that the ship was nothing but antennas from stem to stern. We even, aft of amidships, we had a pedestal with a 16-foot dish that in stow position was pointed skyward. That was a communication system to communicate via the moon. In those days, we didn't have satellites, so in order to communicate directly to Washington, we actually bounced a signal off the moon, which gave us 5 hours of communications each day. The Israelis apparently didn't like the fact that we were there. That morning, we observed about 12 aircraft periodically through the morning that came out to the ship and took pictures, and it was a very friendly atmosphere in that the pilots would rock their wings to say hello, and we really felt relaxed in that Israel, since we were off the coast of Sinai, and Israel now had Sinai, had acquired Sinai, it meant that the reason for us to be there was really redundant at that point. And I should mention that the Joint Chiefs realized that, and they tried to send us a message to pull back at 100 miles. However, that message was misrouted, and we never received it.
So let me ask you, Ernie. I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me ask you. So how far from the coast of Egypt was the USS Liberty docked?
We were in international waters, and we were sailing between Gaza and the Sinai, doing a lazy 8. But we were never closer than 13 miles,
Okay.
which is international waters.
And you said that the Israeli pilots photographed the USS Liberty. They photographed your ship.
Absolutely, yes. And some of them came in so close, you could see the pilots, and they waved and smiled, and we waved back. One of the things that the guys used to do when they weren't on watch, in the situation we did not feel threatened, the guys would sunbathe. So what the Israeli pilots saw and photographed was some sailors that were on beach chairs and towels scattered throughout the ship. I mean, right out of the pages of McHale's Navy. The USS Liberty was not a man of war, so we were not aggressive. We did not pose any kind of military threat, with the exception of the fact that we had the capability of picking up various kinds of transmissions, VHF, UHF, RF, and SHF. So we, as I said, we would vacuum the ether. Now, we had Russian linguists on board because initially one of the fears, I guess, from the White House was that possibly or that Russians might be flying Egyptian or Syrian planes, and if they broke radio silence and we were able to detect that, that would be a major concern and something that the Pentagon and the White House would want to know. But as I said, it was really now redundant for us to be there. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the Israelis returned with 3 aircraft, and they started strafing the ship with rockets and 20-millimeter cannon. This operation killed about 10 of our sailors, and they then returned with 2 fighter bombers and dropped napalm canisters port and starboard. Our damage control were tremendous. They were being shot at, but yet they fought the fires. The fires were kept outside the ship, and they did a marvelous job of getting the fires under control. There was a momentary quiet, and then 3 torpedo boats showed up, and they then were attacking us with their 40-millimeter cannons and 50 caliber machine guns. Anyone outside, anyone that go one outside was a target, and we were target practice for that. They had nothing to worry about as far as we couldn't return fire. We had 4 50 caliber machine guns, but in that situation, first of all, the jets killed the fellows manning the forward 2 50 caliber machine guns, and it was too dangerous to fire back in that situation because the machine guns were out in the open. So we could not return fire. And besides which, the captain knew that they were Israeli torpedo boats, and he was desperately trying to signal them to let them know that we were an American ship. Of course, they knew that. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, because the Israelis used torpedoes, this was a deliberate attempted murder of 294 Americans. I want to make that point very clear. This was the attempted murder of 294 Americans. As it was, we did take 1 torpedo. Our captain managed to dodge 4 of them, but we took a 5th one in our starboard side, and it's miraculous that the ship stayed afloat, but that killed 24 of the 34 that were killed. So there's really killed 34 and wounded 174. So 2/3 of the crew were either wounded or killed. And the attack lasted for about 90 minutes total. We're not sure what happened as far as why they stopped, because the next thing that happened was that they sent 2 helicopters with Marines on board, armed Marines, and they were going to land on the ship and take the rest of us out. But as they were hovering, they must have received some sort of orders, or that telling them to leave the area. And I can't make it explain it any better that the fact that and by all naval accounts, the USS Liberty should have sunk, and that inspired me because of the events and a calling, you might say, that because of the subsequent cover-up that occurred, that I knew something was very, very wrong, and the fact that we endured this, the USS Liberty crew were given insights into our government that most Americans don't ever see, and we have we formed an association, the USS Liberty Veterans Association, and over the years we've compared notes and realized that the fact that the USS Liberty was attacked by Israel and killed 34, attempted murder of 294, and President Johnson gave them a free pass. They were never held accountable for it, and President Johnson deliberately misled the American public, including the Navy Court of Inquiry that took place following the attack. The Navy Court of Inquiry was a sham. It was that they were the president of the Navy Court of Inquiry was Admiral Leslie Kidd. I'm not sure about the first name, Admiral Kidd, and his counsel, his lawyer, a JAG officer by the name of Captain Ward Boston. They were told before they actually started the investigation that they would conclude that the attack was accidental, and they were only given like 2 weeks to complete the investigation. And for the fact that there were 34 Americans killed, and a ship that was damaged, which so badly that it would never see the light of day again, as far as operating as an intelligence ship. So this was a serious, very serious situation, and as I said, it was orchestrated. The crew was given a gag order that we could never talk about the incident. We couldn't even tell our wives, and we were told that if we were ever caught talking about the USS Liberty, we can be in prison for 10 years or $10,000 fine or worse. That really scared a lot of the sailors, and so much so that some have did not even join our association for fear that that we would be prosecuted someday.
Ernie, where did this order come from? This gag order?
Was, as I said, it started from President Johnson and filtered down through Admiral Kidd and Admiral McCain, and he was based in London, the father of Senator McCain.
Senator John McCain.
Yes. And they were all doing their following orders, let's put it that way, following orders. However, Captain Ward Boston, in 2000 and at the end of 2003, he gave us a sworn affidavit that explaining of what I said, that they were told to come to that conclusion before the Navy Court of Inquiry.
So you have an affidavit from the JAG lawyer assigned to investigate the attack, telling you in a legal affidavit, a sworn affidavit, that he was told to draw the conclusion that it was an accident before they began the investigation. That's what you're saying? Right.
And the testimony of the crew was lacking. The certain pieces of the testimony. One of our officers Lloyd Painter, witnessed the Israelis machine gunning our life rafts, which is a crime against the Geneva Convention. And all of that was left off of the Navy Court of Inquiry. He gave that testimony, but anything that would be critical of Israel was removed. When the Navy Court of Inquiry was returned to Washington, the Admiral Kidd and Ward Boston were met with two representatives in the White House, where they changed the Navy Court of Inquiry even further. It was a complete whitewash. Another lawyer that got involved was Admiral McCain's lawyer in London. His job was to review the Navy Court of Inquiry for Admiral McCain and approve it, and then Admiral McCain, of course, would sign the completed report to go back to Washington. The captain had problems with the report that he was given, and he kept after reviewing it through the night, the next morning he told them that the conclusions were not supported by the evidence that was indicated in the report, and it was immediately taken from him. He never signed it, and apparently Admiral McCain did sign it and send it on. That bothered this captain, and he eventually became the Navy's Judge Advocate General from 73 to 75. And he even asked to see the Navy Court of Inquiry, and no one in the Navy JAG could find a copy of it, which he was furious and could not believe that he couldn't see it. Years later, I eventually was able, through Freedom of Information Act, to get a copy of it, which I gave him. And he's been a solid supporter up until his death ever since then. And I should mention another supporter that came out of the woodwork over this was Admiral Thomas Moore. He was the chief of naval operations for a period, and then became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs under the Nixon administration. And he saw wrongs being committed, and I guess what happens is these officers, rather than be fired and to damage their reputations for a lifelong service to our country, realize that they can only go so far for what they can say. And he waited until he retired, and then became a very forceful advocate of ours. And I am, up until his deathbed, I'm eternally grateful to Admiral Thomas Moore. I got to know him, and he couldn't have done more for us. And just the mere fact that someone of that caliber, a 4-star admiral, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, when he makes a comment, there's a lot of weight there. In 2002, he formed a group and studied the USS Liberty attack. It was called the Moore Commission, and the conclusion was that they also came to the same conclusion, that the attack was deliberate, and criticized the Johnson administration for the things that did and did not happen. One of the things that happened was a recall of planes. We sent a mayday when the jets first started attacking us, and that was received by the USS Saratoga, the captain of the aircraft carrier, and the captain of the Saratoga, Captain Tully, immediately launched planes to come to our aid, and he sent a message to the USS America, where Admiral Geis, who was in charge of Sixth Fleet operations, was on board, and he requested that airplanes from the USS America also join him. Now, the point I'm making here is that when the jets first attacked us, we did not know who was attacking us. So it could have been the Soviets. They didn't know, we didn't know. And Admiral Tully was doing the right thing. That if you have a wounded soldier on the battlefield, you must come to their aid. And that's what he was doing. The message was sent back to the White House, telling them what was going on. And Robert McNamara, the defense secretary, recalled the aircraft. Admiral Geis couldn't believe what he was hearing, but he did what he was told and ordered the planes to return to their decks. He thought about it and thought, well, maybe that Washington thinks that the plane were nuclear equipped or nuclear armed, and he relaunched aircraft, and he sent a message back to the White House indicating that what he was doing, that the ship was being attacked, but the planes were conventionally armed. He wanted to make that abundantly clear to them. It was conventionally armed planes. And this time, President Johnson got on the line, and what I'm about to say, we have confirmed this. We have confirmed with other sailors that heard this comment, where President Johnson said, "I don't care if the ship goes to the bottom. I will not have my ally embarrassed. Return the planes." So the President of the United States denied us those aircraft. Now, could the aircraft made a difference? Possibly. The one thing that has not been done accurately is a good timeline, where maybe they could have stopped the torpedo boats from finally putting a torpedo on the side of us, which killed 24 of the 34. So I have been reading since, like I said, these insights that we've been given, that Johnson was a psychopath, and he knew that the attackers were the Israelis. Otherwise, how could he make that statement? And
Ernie, I want to jump in here just for a minute. You said you had confirmation from other sailors who did you say they overheard President Johnson recall the American jets that were initially sent to your rescue?
Absolutely, yes. In no uncertain terms.
For the benefit of the viewer and the listener, can you elaborate a little bit on these sailors and how the introduction between you and these sailors took place, where they wind up relaying this incredible information to you? How did you meet these sailors? How did they come to share this information with you?
We from in order for the communications to take place, this was voice communications from the White House. They had to have patched the circuit through other relay stations. So the relay site was Morocco. We had a communications base there.
Okay.
And I don't remember the sailor's name at the moment, but he um, he was involved in patching that connectivity to to get to the Sixth Fleet that was in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
So he overheard that comment, and it also Admiral Geiss had a meeting with our security chief, Commander Lewis, Dave Lewis, who was recuperating from wounds he received on the Liberty, and he was medevaced to the America, and Admiral Geiss went to see him and said he told Dave Lewis that I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to promise me you would never say anything until I die. And he told Dave Lewis, that he said he knew a cover-up was coming, and that he told him the story about the planes being recalled, and the fact that President Johnson made that statement. So that came from Admiral Geiss, and Dave Lewis did what he was told. And at our 20th reunion, he then told us this story about the aircrafts being recalled.
Wow. So he kept his word, and he held this secret for 20 plus years.
Yes.
Is Dave Lewis still alive today?
Yes, he is.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'd love to hear from him. I would love to talk to him.
Sure is.
Now,
yes.
just for the viewer, I want to have you backtrack, because just a few minutes ago you said when you were first being attacked that you did not know that it was Israelis who were attacking you. Now, shortly before that, you said your captain, I'm guessing this was Captain McGonigal,
Yes.
identified at some point during the attack. So it sounds then initially you weren't sure who was attacking you, but at some point your captain identified that it was the Israelis. Can you clarify for the viewer how it is that as of today, or shortly after, even by the time the ship crawled into Malta, that identification took place, whereas you and the other people, the other survivors on the ship, knew for certain that it was Israelis who had attacked you the night before?
The planes that were attacking the ship, the markings on it is such that none of the observers, Liberty observers, could tell that they were Israeli planes. As a matter of fact, we assumed that they were Egyptian, but we had no proof. However, when the motor torpedo boats arrived, they were flying Israeli flags. That's why our captain was so determined to try and communicate with them to let them know that for sure that we were an American ship. As I said, but they knew that, and it didn't matter.
So Captain McGonigal saw the Israeli flag on the torpedo boats.
Yes.
And your Captain McGonigal attempted to send a message to the torpedo boats. Hey, these are Americans you're firing at.
We were, with blinking lights. The captain tried to communicate with them. Yes.
Okay.
But it did, like I say, it didn't matter. That wasn't a concern of theirs.
Apparently not.
We were target practice for the day.
Can you talk about the subsequent cover up and well, okay, well, I'm jumping ahead of ourselves here. So the torpedo attack is ended, and this is the third wave of the attack, which is the helicopters, and it looks to you as though the Israelis are at some point considering rappelling down to and boarding the USS Liberty.
Absolutely, yes.
So we kind of jumped ahead a bit. What happens after they leave, and what happens at that point when the helicopters decide to duck tail and turn around and leave? How do you come to be rescued and alive here today to tell us about this story?
Okay. No, there was another helicopter that flew out that had on board the Navy attaché from our embassy, and he flew out to the ship and he put his card with a little note and on the card and a bag of oranges that was dropped down onto the ship, and asking the captain if there was any casualties. If any, that was ridiculous because it was obvious that sailors were dead and body parts blown all over the forecastle of the ship with blood running all over the place for him to ask. So our captain was immediately furious, and I would rather not say what he said to the in response. Um, that there was nothing more about that helicopter that's worth talking about. But I just wanted to bring that up.
Actually, there is. I got to interrupt you here. There is definitely more to talk about. You're saying an American was in a helicopter and flew over this blood-soaked U.S. ship, but didn't board the ship. He put a message in a bag and dropped it down to the ship. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the Liberty did not have any kind of landing capabilities for a helicopter. There was no landing platform, so it hovered over the ship, as I said, and that was his way of getting, I guess, compassionate note to the captain. Do you have any casualties? Well, our captain didn't see it that way.
I don't either.
Our wounded captain didn't see it that way. And by the way, our captain received the Medal of Honor later on, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But we did not see any help from the Sixth Fleet. As I said, the president ordered that the planes should not fly out to us, and so the Admiral Geiss sent two destroyers at maximum speed to us, and they arrived next morning at 5 o'clock. Now that can be construed. In other words, since we took a torpedo, the only thing that was keeping the water from being and flooding the ship were some very light bulkheads, inner walls that were in danger of fatiguing and breaking loose. Our damage control initially did some shoring up, but there's, the point I'm trying to make here is that if those bulkheads had given way, the destroyers would have been looking for debris, not a ship, and our wounded certainly would have never survived, let alone the rest of us. And could that be that President Johnson was hoping that the ship would sink? It remains to be seen, I guess, but it sure appears that way.
That's what it sounds like to me, Ernie. I'm looking at your book here, and in the first chapter, you talk about how the rescue effort did not take place for 18 hours after the attack.
Right.
But you say in your book here on page 22 that U.S. aircraft carriers, the USS Saratoga and USS America, that were carrying fighter jets, were only 15 minutes away.
That's right. That's right.
So if these two ships were only 15 minutes away, why did it take 18 hours for them to come to rescue you?
15 minutes of air of jet flight time.
Okay, that's fair. So 15 minutes of flight time. Okay, maybe how long would it have taken the USS Saratoga and the USS America to get there. But and you did clarify that if a helicopter couldn't have landed on on the boat on the ship USS Liberty, there was no room for a helicopter to land. So obviously fighter jets couldn't land there, but they could have at least provided some kind of security, some visible security, so that you couldn't be further attacked.
Right. Or that they could have just simply kept us in observation while some slower aircraft that let's say would monitor our safety.
Right.
But
So
anyway, the USS Davis was one of the destroyers that came aboard and provided medical assistance and further damage control. And they did a great job of shoring up those bulkheads so that the next curious thing that happened was that we could have gone to Crete and to go into dry dock to repair the ship. But that was not the orders. The orders was for us to go to Malta, which took us another 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks. I'm not sure. It was a long time for us to sail from where we were to Malta. Again, were they hoping that the ship would sink? In other words, the fact that the Liberty was still afloat was going to be a problem for President Johnson. And the reason that President Johnson wanted the story to be buried and subsequent actions that he took, simply he was looking for Jewish votes. He wanted to solidify the various Jewish organizations were not happy about the Vietnam War, and they were not truly in his camp. So by doing what he did, burying the story, and appearing that he was he changed things that heretofore we were not in bed with Israel. What I'm getting at is that President Eisenhower and President Kennedy had a balanced Middle East policy, and they had set up an arms embargo that we would not sell arms either to the Arabs or the Israelis. With Johnson, all of that changed in a major way, and he let everyone know that he was definitely on the Israeli side, and the fact that 34 Americans were killed was nothing but fodder to him because he needed their vote to get reelected.
I just I cannot comprehend. I cannot comprehend the president willing to sacrifice 294. You said it was 294 sailors on that ship.
Sailors, Marines, and NSA civilians.
Okay, so you have 294 Americans of
Right.
varying services on
Right.
the USS Liberty ship, and the president said, "I don't care if that ship goes to the bottom of the sea. I'm not going to embarrass our allies."
That's right. That's right. That's his state of mind. That was his state of mind. Now, our captain. Now, the reason that the Navy Court of Inquiry had to immediately indicate that it was an accident was for a number of reasons. First of all, that the USS Liberty crew did nothing wrong, and that no one in the Navy did anything wrong. Because if there were any court martials, that would continue to exacerbate his attempt to kill this story as fast as possible. So now the other thing that he had to do was he had to quell the Navy. I mean, the people in the know, and including CIA Director Helms and his Secretary of State, and NSA chiefs, they knew the attack was deliberate. So he could not say that he could not dig his heels in and continue this mindset that it was completely accidental. If it was accidental, that means that the military could not award any medals. All right. So to placate everyone, he allowed the Navy then to award the medals, and to this day, the USS Liberty is the most decorated naval ship for a single engagement.
Because of those medals that were awarded to your crew.
That's right. In other words, if it was an accident, you could not give out Purple Hearts. Right? There's 208 Purple Hearts alone awarded to the crew and to the deceased. Okay?
Okay.
Our captain was given the Congressional Medal of Honor. But Johnson didn't give it to him at the White House. Okay?
So where did he give it to him?
The captain received his medal at a low-level ceremony at the Washington Navy Yard from the Secretary of the Navy. It's the only, in modern times, he's the only one that has received the Medal of Honor that way.
Isn't there usually some ceremony, some pomp and photos taking and all of this when someone receives a Congressional Medal of Honor?
Yes, but that didn't occur. No press were invited at the Washington Navy Yard, so you can see what's starting to happen. Okay, and with that said, all right, I began to realize the importance of writing my book because everything was being set up. Okay, that we were going to be considered the bad guys. We were going to be considered anti-Semitic because the government was taking the stand that the attack was accidental. So why are we saying no, that's not true? It was a deliberate attack. It was the wanton attempted murder of 294 Americans. And because we dug our heels in and we're then labeled anti-Semitic, and then comes the bigotry.
Ernie, I want you in the next few minutes to take your time and walk through very carefully or quickly, I know you're running out of time, the subsequent cover-up. But I'd like for you to start from this point. I know that you're aware that the former CIA officer Phil Giraldi wrote an article a few years ago about the NSA, the National Security Agency, having a submarine in the area of the Sinai Peninsula, who happened to have either photographed and filmed the entire attack. Is it filmed or photographed? Video recorded the entire attack.
Yes.
Okay, so an NSA submarine witnessed from start to finish that this American ship was being attacked by the Israelis.
That's right. And I should mention the same thing with the Pueblo, the taking of the Pueblo by the North Koreans. That was also filmed from a submarine. But the submarines did not have the capability of stopping the attacks.
Understood. Okay. But I just want the viewer to understand that 47 plus years later, this is eerily reminiscent of the Benghazi attack, where we had a U.S. drone in the air filming the attack on the consulate in Benghazi, Libya, and they're watching at the White House in real time, watching the attack unfold for hours by a USS drone, by a United States drone in the skies, video filming this attack. 47 years prior to this, the precedent is a U.S. submarine filming the USS Liberty attack, video filming it, and fine, granted, the submarine couldn't intervene in any way, but at least they're filming it, they see what's going on. I can only assume that someone in this submarine sent a message to Washington, hey, this is what's happening here. I'm astounded by this. I can't imagine what a person on the other side of this camera is seeing and hearing and processing as you describe surviving this assassination attempt, and that it was recorded, and our highest level officials up to the president knew that you were being attacked, and at some point knew who was attacking you, and decided, just like with the Benghazi attack, to recall American assets in the immediate vicinity and stop them from coming to your aid. This is what you pay your taxes for, to have these securities and assurances, and it says in the Constitution to provide for defense of the nation, does it not?
Absolutely. It's worse than that, Vance. There was, each branch of the services had security group personnel. In other words, I mentioned that I was a communications technician. We worked indirectly for the NSA. All right. The Army has a security group, and the Air Force. There was an Air Force plane that was flying nearby, unbeknownst to us and the Israelis, who recorded the pilot conversations between their handlers, their ground handlers, okay, and the planes. There was a Hebrew linguist on board, and there was one plane where the pilot was American, that was an Israeli Air Force, and he saw the American flag, and he refused to attack the plane, the ship, and he told them repeatedly, "This is an American ship," and he was told to take out the target, and he refused, and he was ordered back to base, and consequently court-martialed. Now, the conversation that took place, as I said, between the planes and the ground handlers was recorded by this Air Force Security Group plane, and they sent the events real time to Crete, where their base was located. There was an officer on board in Crete that realized the importance of what was happening, and he patched the teletype information about what was happening onto the Air Force Security Group network and sent it all over the world. So we have two other Air Force officers that seen the same information from Crete. All right, the same story. They had no knowledge of each other, who told us the same story about this American who refused to attack and also subsequent that the ground handlers were telling the planes to take out the target.
You're referring to the Air Force Captain Stephen Forsland, right? And this is the first chapter of your book, where you talk about the Air Force intelligence analyst.
Yes.
Have you is he one of the people who is in constant communication with you and other Liberty survivors, who continually supports you and other survivors today?
I don't think there's any communications that take place on a routine basis. They are always cordially welcome to any of our reunions, but I'm sure glad that we were able to videotape them. In other words, all of this is in the movie Dead in the Water, that was captured by the BBC, and very accurately explains the events that I just explained.
So you have proof then from this Air Force officer who's featured in this film, backing up everything you've said then.
Plus the other two.
Fantastic.
Yep. Now, so there was a gag order. The Liberty was eventually returned from Malta to the States and quietly met the families that were there. Most of the sailors was removed from the Liberty earlier, so it's just a skeleton crew that sailed it back to Norfolk. I should say with a Navy tug because the ship did not have radar, or it was an empty hulk, you might say, and the ship was quietly decommissioned and sold for scrap as fast as they could. And as it explained about the captain, and but fortunately things began to come our way, you might say, and when each of us suspected that there was something very wrong, in that, the government was so forceful that the attack was deliberately, that it was accidental, and the Israeli explanation of the attack was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. They said that we were identified as an Egyptian horse carrier, and that the ship that they were talking about hadn't been to sea for 20 years.
Not to mention you had the U.S. flag on your ship, as you said in your book.
The flag was even shot down, and our holiday colors was put up. It was. You'd have to be blind or very stupid that you did not know that this was an American ship.
And the ship had the letters AGTR-5 on the outside of the ship, right?
GTR-5.
GTR-5, sorry.
And across the stern, USS Liberty in big letters. So not only that, all the subsequent, the actions earlier that day, the photographing of the ship, the Israelis had decisions to make that day on how to get us out of there. They could have done it a number of ways, because we were not a man of war, we were not a military threat. They could have told us, leave the area. There was no communications from them whatsoever. Their form of communications was to attack the ship. Now, what in their mindset we were supposed to be an ally, and they want this ship sunk. It begs to be seen that the order to sink the ship came from Johnson himself. Now, I say that because we know now that the Bay of Tonkin incident in the Vietnam War was a made-up incident. It was orchestrated by Johnson. President Johnson knew what strings to pull and what buttons to push in Congress to get his way. And the Bay of Tonkin incident was a made-up story, so that he could send more troops into Vietnam. So he had some idea what it took. Here comes this war, and he wants to get involved so he can tell the American Jews, hey, I'm going to protect Israel. I'm going to get involved in this war.
Ernie, let me ask you something, just for the benefit of the viewer. You and I have discussed this before, but can you tell the viewer exactly how long do you recall this attack taking place, this three-pronged attack? So then the next question after that is to make clear that it couldn't have been an accident, because accidents are things that only last, a matter of minutes. So how long do you estimate that the attack took place from beginning to end?
90 minutes.
90 minutes?
90 minutes.
And so for an hour and a half, then it's not possible to say that someone was shooting at you accidentally for 90 minutes.
Well, and the fact that it was coordinated between their Air Force and their Navy, and then subsequently helicopters with Marines. So it was a planned attack.
So the fighter jets come first, right? They're shooting at you,
supported by fighter bombers that subsequently came. They dropped the napalm port and starboard, and then the three torpedo boats that followed.
Okay.
And then the helicopters at the end.
So, and you're 100% convinced that it's not possible that this was an accident during 90 minutes from the time the fighter jets came, shot at you, dropped napalm, left, and then the torpedo boats came. There's no way that in those 90 minutes they accidentally fired on a ship clearly marked with big white letters GTR-5 and USS Liberty on it.
Absolutely. Plus the fact that they said they thought we were Egyptian. The Egyptian did not have any kind of ship in their arsenal with the kind of equipment. Remember I told you about the dish, the 16-foot dish that sat on a pedestal?
Yes.
You couldn't miss that, okay? Plus we had other dishes on yard arms on the forward end of the ship. And then antennas, another prominent antenna was these Christmas tree antennas that were forward on our forward yard arm. Okay, the ship looked like something out of Buck Rogers with all these weird antennas. Um, it's impossible for them. I mean, for them to come to the conclusion that we're Egyptian, first of all, just doesn't hold water. And then you then go to the next level. Then what country would it be? Well, what about those 12 overflights that morning, and the friendly activities that took place between the plane and the ship? Um, you know, as I said, they're either very blind or very stupid.
So let's fast forward then. You know, it's unfortunately it's been 47 years. It's 2014 now. We're in the month of October 2014, and you just a few months ago, 3 months ago, passed the 47-year commemoration of the USS Liberty attack. So can you talk about that gathering in Washington D.C. and how many of your brothers, your survivors, are still alive today and still demanding a full and thorough or legitimate investigation into this assassination attempt on your life and the lives of 294 other Americans?
Yeah, let me briefly talk about that for real quick. The um, the investigation that should have taken place, other than the Navy Court of Inquiry, was we have there's a constitutional mandate. It goes back to the days of piracy, that it's in our Constitution that says that the House has to investigate any naval ship that's attacked during peacetime, and they have done so, with one exception, the USS Liberty. Now, that points to a very serious problem in our Congress, all right, in the sense that why wouldn't they investigate the USS Liberty? And by the way, our distractors say, oh, there was investigations. Well, the LVA, the USS Liberty Veterans Association, is offering a $10,000 reward if you can show us that there was a congressional investigation. If you go to any of the, if you go to the congressional archives, they may have had closed door discussions, but they've never had an investigation. The reason I'm saying that is that none of the USS Liberty crew has ever been subpoenaed to come to the Congress to give testimony under oath of what happened. We were the eyewitnesses. That never happened. So our congressmen realize the importance of staying away from any Israeli criticism. You might not get reelected again. Now, that sets up a very dangerous precedent. And that's one of the reasons I had to write my book. As far as our reunion, every year on June 8th in Washington, D.C., we normally have it at Arlington Cemetery at Section 34, where we have a mass grave where six of our fellow sailors are buried. And I would say maybe 15 of the crew are able to come every year to Washington, D.C., and families of the deceased that can make it. will come to Washington, and we come together and say our prayers and remember our sailors. Um, and I must commend, there's a group called No Greater Love that has helped us over the years to do this commemoration. And that has morphed into the Presidential Commission uh, uh, that has started under President Bush, the Presidential Commission on Remembrance, that has also gotten involved. This past year, we decided to have the reunion at the Navy Memorial at 7th and Pennsylvania because we have gotten close to another group called the American Cold War Veterans, and they wanted to join up with us so that we would mutually go to their affair and they would come to our affair. And so we had about I'd say 90 people at the Navy Memorial, and it was a beautiful sunny day, a bit windy that caused us issues with our wreath. I had to have someone hold the wreath in place because the wind would just blow it over. And we had a very nice ceremony outside at the Navy Memorial, and I would tell your viewers that if you've never been to the Navy Memorial at 7th and Pennsylvania in Washington D.C., you should go. There's a museum inside where you'll find a model of the USS Liberty, a 3-foot model of the USS Liberty in a glass case there, and with other and as well as other ships. The folks at the Navy Memorial are superb. They are truly patriots in no uncertain terms. Keeping in mind that anybody that gets associated with us, including you, Vance, can be labeled anti-Semitic for associating yourself with me.
This is what I find phenomenal and ridiculous. If I am attacked by a pit bull and I tell the police and the Animal Humane Society that it was a pit bull that attacked me, how am I going to be called anti-pit bull if I'm describing accurately the thing that attacked me? If I'm attacked by a person of any race, black or white, and I'm explaining to the officer as I'm dialing 911 on the call, calling for help, and they ask, what does the suspect look like? And I'm describing to the police what the suspect looked like. How then am I in court when I have to point out that person in trial and identify that person? Because they ask you in trial, can you point to the person? Is the person who attacked you in the courtroom today? How does that person's family then jump up and go, oh, well, you're anti? That's ridiculous. You're identifying your attacker.
I hear what you're saying, but
That's insane.
If the government says Vance is a troublemaker, look out. Whatever he has to say is questionable. You see where this can go?
Understood. Yeah, I'm prepared for that, but that's absolutely ridiculous. The best that they could do is to smear the victim and come up with these. These are brilliant shields, by the way, because it not only deflects the criticism, it actually gets the person and the public to stop looking into the veracity of your argument, your claims, and then to focus on the individual person and never the details. It's absolutely brilliant. Stupid, but it works quite effectively, unfortunately.
And over the years, as I said, this bigotry that we have suffered because we refuse to lie. And the book that I wrote is called Liberty and Injustices, A Survivor's Account of American Bigotry. And it's available on Amazon.com. And
could you hold that up again, Ernie? Ernie, for the camera. Sorry. And where can the viewers purchase your book?
Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, and Books A Million. Can go online. You can order them that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to recommend to everyone that they purchase a copy of this book. I have my copy here. Ernie was kind enough to give this copy to me. Purchased this copy in Washington when we met at the National Summit to address the U.S.-Israel Special Relationship. And the font is very big for those of us who have eye issues and need to have enhancements. The font's very large. It's an easy read. It's 180 pages, and this is without a doubt one of the most shocking. And you've heard Mr. Gallo just give you a brief summary of the account in this book. It's 180 pages. It's a quick read. It's called Liberty and Justices, a survivor's account of American bigotry. And this is a must-have book. And those of you who have Kindles, I'm pretty sure you can get this book from Amazon.com, and you can have it inside your Kindle. You can read it while you're on the bus or the train or while you're stuck at the airport. It's only 180 pages. It's a very quick read, and it is a must-have. You need to have this book in your library. Ernie, in closing, is there anything else that you want to share with the viewer? Anything that we might have glanced over quickly?
Well, the reason I feel like I have this calling, it's a spiritual calling, and that our founding fathers gave us the most humane form of government that the world has ever seen. And our founding fathers were smart enough to give us a tripartite form of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judicial. When it comes to the Middle East, the judicial, the Congress of the United States, it's been lacking. There's an issue that our country has to come to grips with. I'm sorry, the legislative. The Congress has to come. People need to realize that there's something very wrong that's afoot here. That they won't investigate the USS Liberty. That is a microcosm to a much bigger problem. There are things that Israel has done. They've broken international law, and Congress does not get, in other words, it's supposed to represent our American ideals. And if there's a chief executive that is lacking, that they should be getting in his face and reminding him that they've broken international law and they should be taken into account. I find it very fascinating the fact that we can tell Russia that they're breaking international law when we support Israel and they do it every day. So I'm really worried that when it comes to the Middle East, that our Congress is not doing their job. They're failing to represent the American public as our founding fathers created it. So we're going down the wrong track. And for the sake of our grandkids, things better change. The fanatical Islamics are coming no matter what. It's too late. We have supported Israel for too many years. There have been too many Palestinians killed. And yes, there's been Israelis killed too, but many more Palestinians than Israelis. And for the person that's got a head on their shoulder needs to think about, why isn't there peace after all these years? Why can't there be peace in Palestine? And why isn't our Congress as curious as, let's say, I am, as to why this doesn't happen? The fact that our Congress can be controlled by a foreign government scares the heck out of me. And it's not the way our form of government is supposed to operate. And until that changes, until we come to that realization that this is happening, in other words, we got to bite that bullet. And Congress needs to be putting America first.
I agree with you there, but Congress doesn't have the greatest track record of putting America's first. When you've just laid out that Congress has turned a blind eye and continually turns a blind eye for now in 2014, the 47th year of Congress turning a blind eye to 34 Americans being slaughtered in broad daylight, which we didn't make clear. This attack on the USS Liberty took place in broad daylight, was it not? This was 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, correct?
2 o'clock, yes.
Right, 2 o'clock. So this wasn't some late night attack where this ship with the USS Liberty was not readily or visibly identifiable. This was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and 34 Americans are assassinated by our ally in Congress for the 47th year. Here we are now. This is the month of October in 2014, and for 47 years, Congress has not put America first by investigating the murder, the brutal murder of 34 Americans. I don't have a lot of faith in Congress doing the right thing and putting America first. As you know, most of our congressmen and women are millionaires, six-figure people, millionaires, and their idea of putting America first is putting their bank accounts first. That's what it appears to be. I mean, there may be 1 or 2 good members of Congress. I don't personally know any, but I've heard that there are. So I'm going to take the word of people like Cynthia McKinney and Ron Paul and others who say that there are some and Dennis Kucinich. They're no longer. None of these people I just named are in Congress anymore. But I'm sure that there are a few, maybe 1 or 2 good congressmen and women serving. I don't know any of them personally, but it doesn't sound like it. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Congress. But Ernie, in closing, quickly, what would you like to see happen with the USS Liberty investigation, and what do you want the rest of America to do?
Well, I would like for Congress to subpoena me and my other members of the crew to give testimony under oath and investigate the USS Liberty once and for all. And in other words, we live with the results one way or the other. Okay, I mean, if there's anything I would love to see, that's it. Okay, and get it settled one way or another. I think that we have enough evidence in our archives to prove in no uncertain terms that 1, the attack was deliberate, and that 2, President Johnson was a traitor. In other words, he did treasonous things, and same thing with McNamara. And we go from there. As far as the American public, please do some research. Read. There's lots of books out there about some of the things I've talked about. Not only my book, but there's many other books that good American patriots have written. And you need to become aware of what is happening in our government. And all of a sudden, things that were a mystery before will become very much clearer. And realizing that that our politicians will lie to you in no uncertain terms, and then what can I say? That should not be. That should not be. I'm gonna leave it there. Okay.
Ernie, I want to thank you so much for your time and your patience and your willingness to sit down and talk with us again. It must be very heart-wrenching and depressing and disturbing to relive this story every time you tell it. So I personally want to thank you for your fortitude and your courage and your commitment to continually discuss this openly, publicly, and thank you for writing your book about it and willing to speak to us. And I hope that we can have you back again to sit down again with us to discuss any further developments that may be coming down the road. hopefully before June 8th of next year to sit down and talk to us again. And I want to thank you for your service and thank you for your calling to continue speaking out about this. And hopefully we can wake up the rest of America and maybe even get this in court. There's no statute of limitations on murder, so hopefully that's an avenue that we pursue.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you for your time, Ernie. I so much appreciate it. Thank you.